Hey everyone, and welcome to Straw Hat Role Models, the Grand Line Edition. For those of you who have been with me for some time, a couple of years back, or last year, I forget exactly when, but I did an investigation, called Straw Hat Role Models. Basically, just looking at some of the models, mentors, guardians, etc. of the current Straw Hat crew. For sake of ease, I decided to divide this up into sections based on where the Straw Hats were introduced, not necessarily where they are from. So just want to point that out for you. So now that we are close to reaching the new world in the English dub, I figured it was time to talk about the Grand Line. And then once we get through the entire series, in theory, I can finally talk about the new world. So, I have in my hands all the backstory notes and thoughts I have about the Straw Hat role models for the Grand Line crew from the Grand Line. I messed up somewhere in there. So we're going to be talking about the Doctor, Tony Chopper. We're going to be talking about the Archaeologist, Nico Robin. We're going to be talking about the Shipwright, Franky, and of course, finally, my main man, Brook, the musician of the group. So just give me a moment to collect my thoughts and my notes, and we can start.
You're going to become a great doctor. I'll make sure of it.
Well, as with the last video, I want to go chronologically with when the Straw Hat crew members joined up. So we'll start with Tony Chopper, the half-reindeer, half-human hybrid, who is the doctor for the crew. Thanks to the medical expertise that he gained from one Dr. Kureha in the Drum Kingdom. Like I said, he's a half-reindeer, half-human animal, in that he started out life normally as a reindeer, consumed the, what was it? I think the Hito no Mi, or the Man fruit, basically allowing him to transform between different versions of a human-animal hybrid. Something we see a few other times, with Dalton in the Drum Kingdom, with Spandam's sword, which is part elephant, which is weird. Also weird is the fact that the sword ate the fruit, but whatever. And yeah. But who was Chopper's mentor? What inspired him to become the character that he ultimately is? Well, that would be one Dr. Hiraluk, a name both famous and infamous in the Drum Kingdom. Famous because, well, he was one of the few doctors for a very long time. Infamous in that he was kind of a quack and didn't really know how to properly, treat people medically. His story is that, in his former life, he was kind of a thief, a robber, a crook, I guess. I don't know very much, but he one day fell ill with a terminal illness. He talked to many doctors trying to find a way to save himself, and unfortunately, all of them were like, "We can't help you. There's nothing we can do. You just have to. Your time will come eventually, unfortunately." However, something miraculous happened. I don't know where it was or why, but one day upon seeing some cherry blossoms, Dr. Hiraluk started to feel better. And so, he went back to the doctors and he was like, "Hey, I'm feeling different. Like, has anything changed?" And they looked at him and they said, "Yes, your body's feeling better." So, to put it another way, think of it like cancer. Basically, it's uncontrolled cellular growth. And sometimes people are fortunate enough to go into remission after treatment. Basically, hey, your cancer isn't spreading and it's not going to slowly kill you. So, that's the best metaphor I can give you. So, because of this, Dr. Hiraluk started to pursue his dream of, curing all diseases. And he started his work in the Drum Kingdom. And if you forgot what I said literally like 2 minutes ago, he wasn't very good at it. Honestly, a lot of times he would go around offering what assistance he could, and he would make things worse. At the very least, I can say he didn't go around killing people. He just, turned this sick person green, or he made that sick person, vomit because, hey, that medicine wasn't very good. But one day, as he's going back to his workshop, he comes across this giant hulking monster. It seems to be hurt, and Dr. Herelook is like, wait, hold on, I'll help you out. And he goes to approach the monster, but the monster is like, very hesitant to interact with a human being. So, I'm not even kidding. I guess in the manga, they didn't do this in the anime, but he stripped down totally naked to show, hey, I don't have any weapons, I have no means to harm you. Please, let me look at you and maybe I can help you out. And, the monster conceded to this, and, well, little spoiler of the story, that monster was Chopper. You see, Chopper ran into some issues because he wasn't quite a reindeer anymore, and he certainly wasn't a human. So, he'd been wandering around, and he'd been found by some villagers, and they attacked him. Shooting at him, throwing rocks, etc. It was very bad, and he was hurt. But Dr. Herelook came across him, and they became fast friends, which is kind of nice, because, Chopper was ostracized for being different, and Dr. Herelook was ostracized because, well, he was really bad at medicine. Some people were like, no, stay away, I don't need your medical help. So they worked together for some time, until the time of Dr. Herelook's death. Basically, what happened was, Dr. Herelook started to notice that his symptoms of his illness were starting to come back. And Chopper, being his assistant, wanted to do whatever he could to help him out. So he looked through the medical journals, and he came across this interesting mushroom. I totally forget the name of it, but, it had a small skull and crossbones symbol next to it. And Chopper was like, oh my gosh, this must be a good thing. Because Dr. Herelook hung up in his workshop a Jolly Roger, the skull and crossbones pirate flag, with some cherry blossoms sprinkled on it. So Chopper automatically associated this with something good, curing disease, and he set out to get this mushroom and made it into a soup, and he offered it to Dr. Herelook. Dr. Herelook was dying, and he was aware that the mushroom was poisonous, but he accepted Chopper's kindness, because he didn't want to hurt his feelings. And I have to have a lot of respect for that, because that's insane. But, yeah. Then somehow word got out about all 20 of the local medical doctors who were captured, kidnapped by the king. Wapple had fallen ill. So, they were trying to find anyone with medical expertise to come up to the castle and try and cure them, because if they all died, who knew what would happen to the country? So, as Chopper lay down to sleep, after his long journey of getting the mushroom and preparing the soup and all that, Dr. Herelook pressed on. He was like, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to help them. Only to find that it was actually a trick. And that, at the gates of the kingdom, there were the 20 MDs and a firing squad. And basically, the idea was to kill any medical experts left. So Dr. Herelook and Dr. Kreha, and I'll talk about her in a minute. But, they put the soldiers ready their guns. They're about to fire when Herelook says, stop! You don't have the power to kill me. Do you know when a man dies? Do you think it's when a bullet pierces his heart? No. Is it when he eats a poisonous mushroom soup? No. When his body is assailed by an incurable disease? No. A man dies when people forget about him. It's a pretty moving speech. I found the clip a couple of times on YouTube, and it's one of those things that really stuck with me from Dr. Heerlook. Anyway, Dr. Heerlook, after that, took a medical, mixture that he made, and he downed it after that, and unfortunately exploded. And he knew that was going to happen, and he did that intentionally because he didn't want Chopper to blame himself for the deadly mushroom soup. It was just hey, like, I'm going to go anyway. The MDs are fine, and I'm not going to hurt anybody in my passing by doing this, and yeah.
Even if I should disappear right now, my dream will come true.
So, Chopper was left alone without Dr. Heerlook to guide him. And Chopper was ultimately picked up by Dr. Kureha, known as kind of a witch throughout the Drum Kingdom. She was a great medical expert, but she also would charge you a lot for that service. Like, hey, your child has the flu. Well, guess what? You're going to pay me 50% of your profit from, like, this week or this month or whatever. Otherwise, hey, you're gone. Although if your kid does say thank you, she'll take it down a bit. 49%, that's a bit. But, again, she was a medical genius. She taught Chopper everything he knows about medicine. Well, everything he knew up till... Never mind, I'm not going to spoil that. But, yeah. And she used him kind of as a sled dog to pull her around the kingdom as people made house calls. And also she lived on top of a mountain, and, well, it's not so easy to climb down a mountain when you're like 140 something? Or 200? I forget, she was old. But, yeah. And, that's the story of Chopper's allies, Dr. Heerlook and Dr. Kureha. Two medical, I'm going to say professionals in quotes here, who showed him that medicine is about compassion and skill, and that if you just have one or the other, you're not going to be as good as a doctor. And he's definitely taken that with him. And unfortunately, I want to point this out, I should have said this before, but these stories do get a bit harder as the series goes on, as we will see next when we talk about Olivia Nico, the mother of Nico Robin, the archaeologist. So give me 1 second. Alright everyone, welcome to Olivia Nico and Nico Robin. First off, who is Nico Robin? Well, Nico Robin is the archaeologist of the group. She joined up with them after the Alabasta arc, when she had previously worked for Brook Works and a man known as Mr. Zero. Now she spends her time fighting alongside the Straw Hats and laughing laughing in a kind, motherish way, I would say, at their ridiculous antics at time, and throwing down when she has to. One of her cool, most interesting qualities is the fact that she ate the Hina Hina, right? The Hana Hana no Mi, a devil fruit that allows her to sprout her limbs as if they were flowers on the ground. So no joke, she uses this to sprout her hands, her feet. I believe even her eyes at times like spy around, and it's cool and interesting. But what about Nico Robin's story before she met the Straw Hats? She grew up on the island of O'Hara. Basically an island for scholars, where this building known as the Tree of Knowledge resided. Scholars from all over would come to study history and talk and learn and basically just educate. And Robin lived on this island. Her mother, Olivia, had left her with some relatives because Olivia was obsessed with going out and finding the poneglyphs. These giant stone cubes, tablets, whatever, that basically document history. Because as an archaeologist, history's a big deal. And so, Robin lived on this island. Unfortunately, I guess, at some point early in her childhood, she'd eaten the Hana Hana no Mi. So she was kind of ostracized by, all the other kids, and some of the adults were saying, oh no, she's a demon because she ate that fruit, so don't play with her, she's bad. Also, really quick, ostracizing. Basically excluding people because, hey, I don't like them. They're different. Yeah, it happens in anime, too. Go figure. In case that word wasn't clear to anybody. But, yeah. So, Robin spent a lot of her time, going to the tree and studying. And so much so, in fact, that at age 8, not even 10 years old, had passed an exam to become an official scholar and archaeologist, if I recall. It was one of the two. Whatever. Anyway, so Robin spent a lot of time studying, and she learned eventually to read the poneglyphs. Basically, like I talked about them before, the issue with the poneglyphs is that they're carved in this weird old language that, unfortunately at this point, not many can read. Robin can, and that's the only person that I know of. And unfortunately, there is bad reason for that. So, sometime, in Robin's childhood, Olivia and Nico actually came back to the island. Unfortunately, she didn't have very good news. It would seem that a group working for the world government, CP9, had come across her and some of her fellow scholars who were out exploring the world looking for the poneglyphs. And they'd taken them and they'd kidnapped them because it seemed they were getting a bit too close to something known as the Void Century. In the One Piece world, I believe the year is currently like 1,000 or something. I don't know. But the history for the years between 800 and 900 are missing. No one knows why, and people want to know what happened then, because obviously 100 years, something big had to have happened. Well, the world government doesn't want people talking about that, apparently. So they took them hostage. Luckily, thanks to a Marine Vice Admiral, I believe, Jaguar D. Saul, Olivia was able to escape and get back to Alhara. Unfortunately, the Marines knew that's where she came from, based on some personal items that the crew had. So she came back to warn everyone, like, the Marines are coming, we have to get out of here, we have to save all of the books and knowledge. Because that was one of the things Olivia was very concerned about, was knowledge. It's mankind's greatest treasure. Without it, we have nothing. Our history is what matters. And as many historians will tell you, those who do not know history are bound to repeat it. So she came back to warn everyone. Unfortunately, not a lot of people bought into the story in the beginning. But when the Marines show up and they start blowing up crap and, they're evacuating the island, forgot to throw in the quotes, they were like, oh crap, we have to save all the books and everything. And they did what they could. And Olivia stayed behind because, like I said, her big thing was, guarding mankind's greatest treasure, our history, our past. Because with that we can make a better future. So she left, young Robin in the hands of Jaguar D. Saul to hopefully get away. And I'm not going to go into all the details of it because it's pretty interesting and crazy, but she did. However, the world government knew of her existence, and so they slapped a bounty on her. 88 million. For like an 8-year-old child. All because she could read the poneglyphs, and if she ever came across the wrong poneglyph, she would know the Void Century. And that would not be good for the world government, because again, they obviously did something bad they don't want to talk about. So, Robin spent a lot of her childhood, running from different place to place, trying to hide and, not be found out by the world government. But unfortunately, a lot of the places that she turned, the people turned on her and tried to, get the bounty. So, I mean, 88 million, for turning in an 8-year-old, man, freaking, that's heartless, definitely. But for some people, if you're in the wrong situation, it could mean the difference between, keeping your farm, keeping your house, keeping everything that you love. And so she spent a lot of her life on the run. Eventually, she came to the logical conclusion of, hey, if I join up with, other highly wanted criminals, they won't turn me in. Because, hey, you have this 88 million bounty child, but I see you have a bounty of 45 million. I'm going to take you both, actually. Unfortunately, that didn't work out so well one of the times that she did this, because the Marines found the crew she was with, and, well, they took him on. And the pirates lost. However, Robin would eventually find her way to Brook Works and become known as Miss All Sunday. And, okay, minor spoilers. The head of Brook Works was actually one of the 7 warlords of the sea. Basically, one of the 7 pirates in the Grand Line who was allowed to do whatever they wanted, because, they work for us. So they're not too bad, except that he was. And so, after Broke Works, she joined up with Luffy and the crew, and she's ultimately looking to find the Void Sentry and figure out what happened, and do her best to preserve history. And it's pretty cool and respectable. And with that, we move on to the 3rd Straw Hats to join. The shipwright, Franky.
I see, so your parents just abandoned you, huh? That's terrible.
Hey, stop laughing at me!
Fine then, come stay with me.
So, Franky. What can I tell you about this guy? Well, first off, he's actually kind of a cyborg. And really quick, because there's a lot of debate about this, cyborgs are basically organically enhanced, humans. So like, oh hey, this guy is mostly organic, but he's got a few upgrades. So he's not full robot. There, I said it. Because there's a very big distinction between those and androids. Thank you, Dragon Ball Z. But, no, Franky's a cyborg. He upgraded himself a lot, with some cool stuff like fire breath, chain arms, and the, God, I can't remember what the heck it's called, but basically a giant air cannon that can just blow shit up. It's pretty cool. What? I can't help but like it. Whatever. But, he is also a master shipwright who trained under a man known as Big Tom. And, well, that's an interesting story there. You see, Big Tom was a shipwright in the town of Water 7. Basically, we just go making ships. And in fact, he was famous because he built the ship for a man known as Gold D. Roger. Yes, the very man who spawned the new pirate era with the announcement of, I left all of my treasure in one piece. Currently theorized to be on the island of Raften, or Raftel, at the end of the Grand Line. And, well, some people, namely the world government, were like, hey, you made his ship, we caught him, we don't like you. So you're going to jail too. However, this guy, Big Tom, made a deal with them. Give me 10 years and I will build you a sea train that can connect Water 7, Ein's Lobby, and I forget where else. But basically, just a giant sea train for all this awesome stuff. The government was like, okay, we'll make you a deal. You build us this sea train, we will totally take off the Gold Roger crime. Building the ship for Gold Roger. Because hey, you do something bad, but you do something equally as good, I guess. You know, they call it even. So, Big Tom, in that 10 years, worked on building the sea train. Basically, just imagine, a normal, our world locomotive that can run on water. Except, the tracks are probably about a foot or so under the water. Yeah, so he worked with his 2 apprentices, a gentleman known as Cutty Flam, and a young man known as Iceberg. Really quick, Cutty Flam is the actual name for Franky. Fun fact. I don't know why he changed it, but whatever. Oh, no, wait, no, I do remember, actually. Iceberg suggested he change it because Cutty Flam's a stupid name. Iceberg? Your name is a head of lettuce. Think about that. But, anyway, he only worked with them, and Franky also worked on a side project known as the Battle Franky series. Basically just a fleet of battleships that were meant to take on the Sea Kings. Sea Kings being giant sea monsters that, roamed in the Grand Line. Namely, in the area known as the Calm Sea. Where basically the water doesn't move and it's like Sea King from just all over, and it's crazy. And yeah. But the 10 years passed. It actually stretched out to 14 years to build the sea train. But eventually, Tom and Franky and Iceberg and all the other workers who worked on this thing built the sea train. And there was a grand celebration for us. I mean, this is a cool thing. It could do a lot of good for the community. Bringing in goods, taking goods out, transporting people in general. So there's a large celebration. And, the world government came down to oversee this because, hey, we want to make sure this train is good before we say, you're all good. Unfortunately, something else was going on. It would seem that the head of CP9, a man known as Spandam, had gotten word that Big Tom had the plans for this ancient weapon known as Pluton. One of 3, super weapons that could ultimately do some serious damage to the world. And, well, the world government was like, hey, we can't leave this floating around. We need to get our hands on this no matter what. However, they had to deal with Big Tom. They couldn't take him in because he built the sea train. So they hatched a plan. You see, some of the CP9 members went and stole several of the Battle Franky ships. At that point, Franky had built up to 35 different versions. And they attacked the ceremony. And, people knew about Franky's battleships. He talked about them all the time. He was like, I'm going to take on Sea Kings, and I'm da-da-da-da, and I'm so cool. And it didn't go well. They took Tom into custody. Well, they went after Tom. They were like, hey, Franky's your responsibility. Therefore, we're going to take you to jail. But Tom cut them a deal. He was like, hey, okay, Franky's not a bad kid. He had nothing to do with this. So, I'll take my building the sea train, and I will erase this crime. But that will mean your crime of building the ship for Gold Roger still stands, and we have to take you in. And Tom was like, yeah, I know. But a man, has to take pride in what he builds, whether that ship, does good things or bad. He can't just disown it. And so, they took Big Tom away. But what CP9 did not know was that he had actually given the plans for Pluton to one of his 2 apprentices. I want to say it was Iceberg. But, because Franky was an apprentice too, he was under suspicion. But, they left it alone for some time because it took time to figure this out, obviously. And after Big Tom was taken away, Franky did his best to stop the train. Was hit by the train because he literally stood on the tracks, blasted at it with a giant bazooka, and then tried to wrestle it like a sumo wrestler. It didn't go well. It nearly killed him. But somehow Franky was able to, get back somewhere and augment his body, with the cyborg attachments. So that's the first thing. He's a cyborg because he was trying to make himself stronger so he could defend, his friends and family. And Franky was upset with himself for what happened with the Battle Franky series. So he decided, I'm not going to build ships anymore. I'm just going to go around destroying things. And he became kind of a notorious criminal in Water 7. And eventually, like, the mob boss of the entire city. He didn't want trouble in there, so he decided to take everything over and build Franky House. And the Franky crew. Who would just do whatever the heck they wanted. Whether people liked it or not. Eventually, Franky and Robin would be taken to Einslobby by CP9 and the world government, because of his connection to Big Tom and the plans for Pluton. And I don't want to spoil that story, but it's interesting. Anyway, things would occur, and Franky would ultimately design the Thousand Sunny. Well, would help work on designing the Thousand Sunny, the ship that would carry the Straw Hat crew, across the Grand Line, because their previous ship, the Going Merry, had met its end. It was so damaged that it couldn't be repaired, and they ultimately had to give it, a funeral. And, I have to say, it's interesting, Franky's story. He fought so hard, he was abandoned by his parents, picked up by Tom. And, yeah, I don't know. But he's a good character, and I really like, what he's done.
Give me Tom back!
Now, unfortunately, I have to go to probably an even sadder story. You know what? Guys, give me a minute. I need to collect myself for this.
私にも海賊の意地がある。壁に向かって待つお前とは約束通り正面から再会したい。
And finally, we come to the last Straw Hat to join on the Grand Line. This gentleman is known as Brook. He joined the group in the haunted area known as the Florian Triangle, and worked with them to help combat the master of the island thriller bark, Gecko Moria, one of the warlords of the sea. Brook is a musician. He's very tall. He has a giant afro. Oh yeah, and he's an undead skeleton. Now you may be saying to yourself, what? Well, Brook has an interesting story. You see, a long time ago, 50 plus years ago to be mostly exact, Brook was a pirate on a ship with the Rumbar Pirates and Captain Yorkie. Basically, they were just a fun-loving pirate crew of musicians who made the claim that they could make even a crying child smile. They traveled the seas, and they had the large idea of going across the Grand Line because, you're pirates. What else do you have to do? And so they set off on their journey. Playing music, fighting, having fun. It seemed cool from what we've seen of the flashbacks. But one day, randomly, a small whale just comes up to the ship, and joins along in their merriment and singing. The crew looks over, sees him, and says, oh, it's fine, he'll go back to his family soon enough. But a few days go by as they're sailing, closer to Reverse Mountain and the entrance to the Grand Line, and Laboon's still hanging with them. And they're like, that's weird. But, they have fun with it. Eventually they do come to Reverse Mountain and the Grand Line, and, they have to talk to Laboon. They have to say, hey, we have to leave you behind, because it's very dangerous on the Grand Line. Like, weather conditions can change so suddenly, and there are a lot of dangerous pirates and other crews that we don't know if we can protect ourselves and you, Laboon. So it would be best for you to wait here, and then once we, circumnavigate the Grand Line, we can come back and we can get you. And, well, it seemed like Laboon got that message. So, the crew sets off, goes up Reverse Mountain, back down, and lands at the entrance of the Grand Line. And they come across a strange old man named Crocus at the lighthouse, who, who welcomes them to the Grand Line and notes the odd whale they've got trailing behind them. And yes, Laboon had crossed the Grand Line with them, because he's just like that. So, Brook is, tasked with having another conversation with Laboon and, stressing to him, hey, we need you to stay behind. It's really dangerous. Please, stay with Crocus. He'll watch over you, and we'll be back within, a year or so to get you, and we can travel a Grand Line together, stronger as friends and allies. And this works. Laboon concedes to this request. And really quick, I just want to establish, Laboon's a normal whale. He's not like Chopper, where he has the human intelligence, so, it was a debate, it was humans talking, and, whale squeaks and sonar and such. Anyway, the crew pressed on and made their way to an island called Little Garden. Basically, this island is kind of like prehistoric times, like if the meteor hadn't hit and killed all the dinosaurs. Or whatever killed all the dinosaurs, I don't know at this point. Unfortunately, while that island is very cool and pretty, that also means there are some very dangerous and bad diseases floating around that island. So after the crew had left the island, they started to note that some of the people are starting to get sick. And, they wanted to turn back and leave the Grand Line because, you can't just go forward on the Grand Line if you're literally going to die from illness. So Captain Yorkie and Brook, who by this time had become the vice captain, the first mate, whatever you want to say, split the group. Yorkie, unfortunately, was one of the men who had fallen ill. So he and I don't know how many people, had got together what they could and tried to get off of the Grand Line. Unfortunately, it would seem through the calm lands, that part of the sea where the water doesn't really move, so your ship's kind of stuck, and there are lots of giant sea monsters, and you're probably going to get eaten. Because, yeah, it's kind of hard to beat sea monsters, when you're sickly and dying. However, I would like to stress that they never really said, hey, they died. But rumor about this got back to Crocus, and basically was saying, oh, hey, these guys, the entire crew fled the Grand Line because they just couldn't hack it. Which is inaccurate. I want to stress that. Although, actually, you know what, I'll just continue the story, and you'll see what I mean. So, Brook and the other Rombar pirates just continued on through the Grand Line, and they made their way into the Florian Triangle. Basically, the real world equivalent is the Bermuda Triangle. It's a mysterious part of the ocean where ships just seem to disappear for whatever reason. Well, when Brook and crew got near this place, they were set upon by another pirate crew. Apparently an evil pirate crew, because they used poison-tipped weapons to attack their enemies. Somehow, they fought valiantly, but ultimately everyone, was hurt badly, and somehow they were able to separate the two ships. So, broken rudder, drifting, their doctor, on the crew, dead. It looked very bad for the Rumbar pirates, like they were going to be annihilated at sea. So Brook, rallied everyone together for one last task. No one had forgotten the promise to Laboon to return to, the beginning of the Grand Line. And it would seem that despite all of this, at least one crew member would survive the attack. And that was Brook. He would survive because he'd consumed the Yomi Yomi no Mi, a devil fruit which allows you to be revived. Basically, upon death, your soul leaves your body, but thanks to this, his soul could return to his body. And it's confusing because once people die, generally the devil fruit, reappears in the world. So I don't know if there's a new one out there or what's going on. But anyway, Brook gathered up the crew for one last task. He purchased a tone dial from a merchant. Basically, it's a seashell, that has the ability to record audio. Again, magic, weird stuff. It's One Piece. Don't question it. And he wanted to record a song for Laboon so that if he did somehow circumnavigate the Grand Line, he could at least bring that back to him. And so, people got up, joined together, and started to sing the song Big Sake. And as the song went on, people started to succumb to their injuries and the poison, and and I don't want to show the clip because it's upsetting to me, but even Brook succumbs to his injuries and poison in the end. We see Brook's trademark sunglasses just clatter to the floor and slide across the deck. However, that's not the end of the story, or Brook's tragedy, unfortunately. So, Brook's soul got out of his body, and he did his best to re-find his body afterwards. Unfortunately, it took him at least a year to find it, and by that time, his body had rotted away to just a skeleton. Oddly enough, his soul was able to reunite with the body, despite the lack of skin and muscles and blah, blah, blah. So, cool, Brook's alive. But he's stuck on a rudderless ship that's just drifting in eternal darkness. The Florian Triangle is a very bad place. Luckily, eventually, 50 years later, 50 years of drifting by himself, Brook was found by the Straw Hats and eventually joined their crew. He did this because he could still work toward fulfilling the promise to Laboon to return to Reverse Mountain and take him on the adventure with, another adventure with him. Because it would seem that when Luffy and crew came onto the Grand Line, they ran across Laboon, and Luffy made the same promise. I'm gonna come back, and we're gonna have, and we're gonna have an epic fight and all that. And yeah. And that's pretty much it for the Straw Hat role models for the Grand Line. One of the big things to take away from this and the other video I did is that people follow their dreams for different reasons. Promises to friends. Doing it for something that they believe in so strongly. Just yeah. And, you know, this is no different. Everybody's working to do something because they made a promise to someone. And I made these videos because I feel it's important that we don't forget those promises to those characters. Because they may be gone, but if you forget why you're doing something in the first place, what's the point in even doing it? So, you know, sorry if this was a bit sad and upsetting to you. You know, if you're not a One Piece fan, now you know some of the darkness in this anime. Trust me, it's yeah, it's heavy, but it's also fun and light, so I like it. Thank you for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the video and the clips and the stories and the la-di-da. But I must bid you adieu. So, until next time, everyone, have fun, stay safe, keep hydrated, and of course remember, all characters have a story to tell. I'm Valiant Bradley James, the character investigator.